Well, I have a funny story to tell you about the Robert Kiyosaki situation where, it's not like Robert and I are buds, like it's not like I keep in touch or whatever. But so I'll tell you the story of Robert Kiyosaki. This is a really weird story, but maybe the bigger takeaway from this is the idea that if you want something, you just got to kind of like want it and make something happen. But, a few years back, I think it was more than a few years back, it was like 2016 now. I was on the Real Estate Guys radio. They had this, these cruises, right? Where they were like summit at sea, and I would go on that. I went on that, and and the whole time I was thinking to myself, I really want to meet Robert Kiyosaki. How cool would it be to meet and, talk to Robert Kiyosaki? Because I'm not a guy who really has a lot of heroes or a lot of people I like say, oh, I look up to that person and so on and so forth. But what I will say about Robert in particular is there's no doubt that his books changed the trajectory of my life. And therefore, that's a kind of a big deal, right? I mean, I don't know that anybody else has influenced me in the sense that they changed the entire trajectory of my life. So I went on that cruise and I was really just focused on meeting him and what would I say if I was talking to him and so on and so forth. And in fact, I was hoping, because Robert and Russ from the Real Estate Guys radio were talking about the possibility that I might get to interview him, on the cruise. I was actually writing out questions and just thinking about this. So what ended up happening was really kind of weird. And this goes back to one of my story about making things happen. I don't know if that one's aired yet, about how my story about San Francisco and wanting to be in San Francisco for residency. But this is a similar one to that, where I kind of just decided I was going to meet Robert Kiyosaki and get to know him. We were on this great big cruise ship. The first night, I was seated next to him at dinner. Could have been anybody else in that group, right? But I was seated next to him at dinner, and I got to know him then. So that was pretty cool. And then the next morning, I decided I skip the first lecture in the summit and have a leisurely breakfast in these cafeterias, these huge cafeterias. I walked to the cafeteria and I'm in line, and guess who I am right behind? Robert Kiyosaki again. And then he recognized me from the night before. We sat there and had breakfast together for like an hour. I was talking to him, just very personal questions. What is it like to be Robert Kiyosaki and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. What did you talk about actually?
It was interesting. He talks mostly, right? Because he's like kind of a teacher type, right? So he asked me a lot of questions and kind of gave me sort of his advice on things. I remember asking him, there was a bunch of people who came up and they were like, hey, Robert, whatever. And then when they left, I said, does that bug you? And he said, yeah, but it would bug me more if they didn't recognize me. But I thought he was
straight up.
Yeah. What I would say about Robert was he is a really smart guy. Like, it's funny because he kind of has the shtick where, he's not the super smart guy, and, he plays sort of like he's the dumb guy, and there was Rich Dad, and, and the rich people were kind of dumb, but they were smart about money. No, this guy's just freaking smart. He's a smart dude, right? That's what I gathered from that conversation. Anyway, so there was that breakfast, and then I go to the summit. And then guess what? At lunch, I'm seated next to him again. Okay. It's like now it feels like I'm stalking the guy, right? Like it's something where like my brain energy was just stalking Robert Kiyosaki, and it would not leave him alone.
You willed that into existence.
Yeah. It almost started freaking me out. I'm like, what's going on here? And then next morning, guess what? Same thing.
No.
I go to breakfast. And I'm standing in line, and who comes up right behind me? Robert Kiyosaki.
Wow.
And we had breakfast again for another hour and a half. I'm not even kidding. It was the weirdest thing. And all I can tell you is it's like, it goes to show you, like, I think your brain energy, and I've talked about this before, and I don't know how it works. I'm not going to be like all, like manifestation and stuff like that, but there's probably something to it. I mean, It's kind of weird, right? Like, I mean, out of this entire ship, right? All these people that came to this event, like, I think there was like several hundred people at this event. I just ended up next to this guy for everything. If you want to know people, you want to, associate with them. I mean, he actually, it's interesting. Robert actually talked about this himself. I remember one of the conversations I had with him was about how, he actually, one of the things he really wanted to be sort of a famous person. Like, he wanted to have famous friends. Like, he wanted to be known in those circles. And so that was his own sort of manifestation coming alive as well. I mean, at the end of the day, listen, I don't know how anybody's going to use this information other than to say that I do think that there's value in knowing that you probably have some power, some energy in you to make things happen, whether that's meeting people or making things happen in your life.